Hello my friends, I'm Robbie from accent.ng.com, and tonight I'm bringing you another American English phrase, which is all part of the 50 American Phrase Acquisition Mission. And tonight we're doing the phrase number 34, and tonight's phrase is to fall out of use. And it means that something has become useless, basically. It's fallen out of use. What's fallen out of use? Dial phones, for instance. You know those dial phones where you dial the actual phone number? I suppose kids nowadays don't even know that they existed, unless you have some old garbage knocking around your garden shed or your attic, and then your child would come across it and ask you, "Daddy, what's that?" Unless you have one of those at home, they probably don't even know they exist, and they're totally fallen out of use. And it's only natural because progress is happening, and within the last 20 years, not even 20 years, I'd say 10 years, the technology has come along, and it's developed probably to a greater degree than within the last 2 or 3 decades. And what else has fallen out of use? Certain phrases may fall out of use, and that's actually the very context where I learned this phrase, to fall out of use. I was reading the last book in the Gone series. Those books are stacked up there, right? I recently finished reading the series, and it's perfect dystopian fiction. If you want to find out more about it, please read this article, and there you're going to find my review of the series, and probably you'll be interested yourself to get a hold of those books and start reading them, right? But anyway, in the last book, it was actually very close to the very end of the book where this idiom was used. Well, it's not really an idiom. Idiom is a phrase that you can't really understand unless you know what it means, such as to be at loose ends. Tell me what it means to be at loose ends. Unless you watched my previous video where I discussed this phrase, you won't know what it is unless you hear the entire context, or I tell you what it means. And here it is. To be at loose ends means to be lost, to go through some sort of a crisis in your life, and then you'll find yourself being very anxious and restless. And it's normally applicable when you're going through some big change. You lost a job, for instance, and then you're a job seeker. You're finding yourself in different situations to what you would normally experience on a regular basis, right? So then you can say that you're at loose ends. And this one, to fall out of use, it's quite self-explanatory. So it's not a very strong idiom, but it's an idiomatic expression. It still has some characteristics of an idiom, to fall out of use. Fall out of use, you just have to learn that this particular word, to fall, goes with use, and fall out of use means that it's not used anymore, That's the idiomatic side of the phrase, to know that those two words go together. Actually, 3 words, to fall out of use, right? But it's quite self-explanatory. If I told you that the old Russian rubles, when I was a kid, I lived in the USSR, which was the biggest communist country in the world, right? And then the country just disintegrated, and all those former Soviet republics gained their independence, and the old money, the Soviet ruble, fall out of use. It basically stopped existing because I would imagine, I don't really remember all those events, but there were bloody events, to be more specific, my friends. People were killed, and the old Communist Party tried to hold on to the power, and they used force, and tanks were actually brought into my country's city as well. I come from Latvia, and in Riga we had tanks driving out on the streets, and people were shot at, and many were killed, right? And I would imagine a massive inflation ensued after those events, when the country disintegrated. There must have been a very, very sharp rise in the price of commodities and the general grocery prices and all that. So definitely the old currency, the Soviet ruble, or whatever you call it. I'm not really sure whether it was called a Soviet ruble or just ruble or whatever. Anyway, it fell out of use because it was no longer of any value, to be more specific, right? And I actually didn't finish off my previous point I was making about finding that idiom towards the end of the Light book, which is the last book in the Gone series, and it was used in the context of a particular phrase not being used anymore in conversational language, and that's how it was used there. You know, a certain phrase fell out of use because it wasn't quite simply used anymore, you know. And that's about it, my friends. I'm quite comfortable with using this American phrase in my conversations. To fall out of use, currency fell out of use, certain language fell out of use, certain words, certain phrases fell out of use, and what was the other example I brought up during the video? I actually forgot, but it doesn't really matter because I have wired these words into my brain. To fall out of use, fell out of use, it's fallen out of use. Yes, dial phones have fallen out of use. That was the first example. It was all about technology and its development. And yeah, that's about it, my friends. This is the 34th American phrase, and I'll see you in the next video where I'm going to be looking at the 35th phrase, and that's going to leave me with another 15 phrases to go. So I'm nearing the completion of this mission. I still keep going strong, and I hope you're following me and learning these phrases with me. Thanks for watching, and take care. Bye-bye.